3D Baloo Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to be showing you the next installment in my Jungle Book series, and this one is going to be Baloo. And in this video I'm going to show you how to do some color correction when you don't have the right shade of acrylic. And so you can either mix acrylic or you can do what I did, which is paint over the top of it. So anytime you don't have the right color, you can always use a color that's close to it or just white or clear and fix it later. So that's a really good thing to know, and I'll show you that here. And don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So for sculpting Baloo, as well as all these other characters, I'm going to begin in the background with a marbled green gradient from a very light green to a dark green. And you may be thinking to yourself, what's the point of sculpting this beautiful gradient and swirly background if I'm going to put 3D art on top of it and cover the whole thing up anyway? Well, the main reason for this is I like to show you guys these crazy backgrounds, because if this is an accent nail and you're going to have something else a little bit more subdued and plain on the other nails, you can use these backgrounds as that choice. Plus, the background does show a little bit around Baloo, and if you flip the nail upside down, you can still see the gradient on the underside of the nail. So there are reasons for it, and I just really like sculpting fancy backgrounds anyway, so it's also just for my personal enjoyment. After I have it all sculpted, I encased some mylar flakes and then encapsulated it with some clear acrylic, and now I'm going to file it into shape with my e-file. This one happened to have a really big piece of mylar flake in it, so there's that one spot that looks super chunky and glowy, but now I'm pretty much going to cover it up. So now, as I mentioned in the intro, I didn't have the right shade of Baloo color. So I'm going to use the closest thing that I have, which is this gray. And like I said in the beginning, if you don't have the right color of acrylic, you can even use something like white or clear acrylic to do your sculpting. And there is absolutely no problem with that. And you can paint over the top of it and no one will be the wiser. The one reason I would probably steer you away from using just straight up clear is because it's harder to see what you're sculpting. It's just a little bit less visible. All the little details that you're sculpting in just don't show up quite as easily to your eye than a color acrylic would, even if the color is white. The other thing to consider is that if you have a color that's pretty close to the color that you need, like for instance what I'm using a really light gray when I need kind of a darker blue gray, is that if a little bit of it happens to show through, no one's going to be able to really see that either. Whereas if you, say, sculpted this with neon yellow instead, because neon yellow is what you have, you're still going to be able to see it. It's still going to be a little bit visible, just, possibly. Maybe not, maybe it won't, but there's a chance of that. So try to either use something that's very kind of not intrusive to the design or something very close. And as long as you have that option available, you can pretty much sculpt with whatever color you want. So now that I'm continuing to sculpt my Mr. Baloo, I've got his face. He's got very high little smiley cheeks. He's such a happy guy that his cheek smiles, his smile lines are very pronounced. And then after I have those sculpted, I'm going to use that exact same color to sculpt his snout. I painted over the entire design in the end, and so even the snout color, which is a lighter gray and closer to the one that I am sculpting with, just still wasn't quite right in my opinion, so I painted over that too. So even though I'm still using this color, it's not going to be the color anything ends up being in the end. I'm going to carve in his smile into that bead I just laid down, and use the tip of your brush is definitely a great option for carving in these little details. If you don't want to use the tip of your brush, a silicone tool or a toothpick or something of that nature can also do the trick. I'm going to use that tip of my brush to carve up the little line for his split lip. And then I'm going to switch to white acrylic to sculpt his eyes. So I used white acrylic for his eyes and black acrylic for his nose. So there's the first eye and there's the second eye. The first eye got to be a little bit too big, so I just actually took a floss pick and I scraped off the acrylic that was there. And I'm going to re-sculpt it with a little bit less acrylic so it wasn't so big. Sometimes, usually that doesn't happen. I'm pretty good about making sure I have the right amount of acrylic for the task, but every once in a while things go south. And I'm sorry, I said black acrylic, I meant brown for Baloo's nose. But now we're going to go through and we're going to be painting over the Baloo character entirely. And so even after I knew I had to color correct it, I knew what color I was going for, I ended up using this kind of a dolphin gray, and it still just wasn't quite right. So after I painted over it once, then I was looking at it, I'm like, nope, that's not it. And then I took some charcoal color paint, and I had that out anyway because I used that to color correct Mr. Bagheera. And I mixed a little bit of that charcoal paint into my dolphin gray as I was applying it across the entire character. Not usually the way that I would suggest doing things. If you're going to be mixing a paint, I would probably do that on a palette and then apply it from there instead of mixing it as you go. But sometimes spontaneity is the route you have to take with art. So then after I have that done, I use that just straight dolphin gray for Baloo's belly that shows. And then I'm also going to use a very light gray to be covering up his snout area. And as you can see, painting over the design certainly works. Not necessarily the quickest route, but it is an option if you get into a pinch where you don't have the right color and don't have the means or the opportunity to get yourself the right color. So I'm going to be doing all of the littler details with some black acrylic paint and going over all the outlines. One of the major downfalls, or maybe the only major downfall besides the time commitment to color correcting a design like this, is that every time you apply a layer on top of the 3D art, it kind of smooths out the details of the 3D. So when you're doing this, try to not use any product that's very thick to color correct. So I definitely would not use gel polish, because gel polish in its nature and what it's supposed to do when it's applied to a natural nail is it's supposed to kind of smooth out your nail plate and get rid of lumps and bumps. And when you're applying that to something that's 3D, it's going to smooth out your 3D detail. So try not to use gel polish if that's at all possible, and either use acrylic paint or gel paint. And gel paint, really press it onto the surface and really try to kind of blend it out and thin it out as much as possible, because that'll also end up being just a little thicker too. So after we've got Baloo finished, his eyes are all crooked and everything, then apply some gel sealer over the background, cure it, and then apply some matte top coat over the rest of the 3D art. And that is it. I love this one. I love all of these. There are 2 left. We still have Mowgli and then Kaa. And Kaa is one of my favorites. I have my favorites at the beginning of the series and the end this time, because Shere Khan and Kaa are definitely the ones that I hold near and dear to my heart. I'm always pro villain, but I hope you guys like this design and tag me in any recreations on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I'll see you next time. Bye!